Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Gentlemen, good to see you guys again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I just have to tell you, because I do watch a lot of TV and movies because, you know, it's part of the gig and everything. In terms of, I talked to you about this last year as well. In terms of how this looks, the color palette, the set designs, there is no competition. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is the most stunning show I've ever watched. And like, I have to tell you that. Kevin, can we just give a shout out basically to the crew again? Because it's the final season, and we got to give a shout out to the crew.
Yeah, we're a bit biased, but some of us have been around for 107 years, and we've seen a lot more than the average bear. So we have a little better, I think, ability to compare. And I, too, like you, watch way too much. And when a show is beautifully shot and beautifully acted and beautifully written, but every department head is some crazy savant, it does stand out a little bit more than the rest. And we have been absolutely spoiled for life with the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel in that area.
And I have to say, too, I don't think we are biased because I maybe you've had this experience, but I'll be at an event or something and I'll run into someone I've worked with, a producer or a director, and inevitably they'll say, "How do they do it?
Yeah.
How do you guys? How do you do that? How did they? What's the budget? Who are these people? Who is your Steadicam guy? What about this art direction?" Yeah, I mean, it's we're hearing it from outside our show all the time, and it just feels good to be part of something that's kind of iconic like that.
Michael, last time we talked about that, you were saying how, like, when you first started on the show too, how big everything seemed too, right? Like how big the sets were, right? Like the scale of it.
Yeah, I honestly had no idea what I was stepping into. I think it was when I saw the lineup of 1950s cars that it hit me. It was like, oh, this show is big,
It feels like a film.
Yeah, and it only got bigger. I mean, every season got bigger and bigger and bigger, I guess, because they liked us.
Speaking of the row of cars, there is a scene, without giving too much away, in season 5 where Abe and Rose are trying to catch a cab. That is one of the most impressive in terms of period piece, taking over an area and filling it with cars and people of the period. It's over the top even for this show.
I can't wait for everyone to see it. Tony, it's interesting you mentioned that because you've worked on some incredible projects in the past as well. When did you start noticing the cinematic kind of components to TV, would you say? Like, do you think it's, the last 10 years, so to speak? Like, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I would say it started 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. There was kind of a shift in the landscape. Films were getting a little more, a little harder to finance, and more people were moving from the film world into the TV world because, commitments could be shorter, and and I'm talking not just actors, writers, designers, directors, cinematographers, were moving from the film sphere into cable and premium channel cable.
I think it was even like 20 years ago, because that's when Sopranos was.
Well, Sopranos maybe I think just was the first wave.
Yeah.
God, time has just flown by. But when that shift started to occur, that's when you started to see the two start to merge. The film and the television world start to merge.
All three of your characters have some of the best arcs also that I really enjoyed. And I kind of want to quickly, before we wrap up, we'll start with Michael. I mean, Joel's arc was so much fun. It's interesting because I feel like all three of the arcs of these characters that you play, there's this kind of goal in mind, but there's these pocket kind of storylines here that come in, like obstacles and everything. Michael, what would you say was your favorite kind of part of the overall arc of playing Joel specifically?
I think how unpredictable it was. I never envisioned him owning a club. I didn't know anything about that. You know, he started out wanting to be a stand-up comic and somehow became a club owner. And there were, you know, different occupations in between. It's plastics company. He worked for his dad. So yeah, just the unexpected nature of it. And, you know, we were saying, I'm the kind of person, I don't like to know things in advance. I just kind of go from script to script. So I was always completely surprised. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and everything made sense. It wasn't like, oh, this is out of left field. You know, it all made sense, and it was part of his trajectory.
Yeah. Kevin, what about you and Moish specifically? Anything you liked specifically about that? I mean, there's the family component. He's running a business. There was kind of a lot with his character over the 5 seasons.
Yeah, you know, I think the storyline of Moish bringing Joel, his son, into working at Maisel and Roth, and then not too soon after deciding to cut him this big check and telling him you're fired as a way of saying, you know, chase your own dream, don't get stuck here. That was completely unexpected from my perspective. But I also so very much loved when Abe and Rose were forced to move in with Shirley and Moish. That might have been one of the pure joys from the whole series.
Oh, absolutely. Tony, I mean, where do we start with Abe? I feel like you could write a whole book about that arc specifically. Anything that kind of stood out. I mean, when he finds out, you know, about his daughter being like a comic, I feel like that's the big kind of where everything kind of starts, in my opinion.
Right. I think it's funny. In every season now, in each of the 5 seasons, Abe is sort of taking on a different mantle. Started with the you know, first Midge's divorce from Joel, and then Abe finding out about what she was doing, you know, in her secret career. Yeah, it's been a really interesting ride to kind of have this character change and be reinvented every season. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. You know, the final season of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel premiering Friday, April 14th on Prime Video. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Seriously, it was an honor and privilege to speak to all of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.